Today is episode 534, a sensitive subject that has a new angle brought on by when people create an illusion of a perfect relationship on social media. Now, you want to learn more and listen to this very important story, what every teacher needs to know about teen dating abuse, episode 534.
The 10-Minute Teacher Podcast with Vicki Davis. Every weekday, you'll learn powerful, practical ways to be a more remarkable teacher today.
Stay tuned at the end of the show to learn about a free classroom management resource you'll want to use. Today, we're talking about a very important topic with Ashley Bendiksen, teen dating abuse and why teachers should understand it. Now, Ashley, this is something that is important to you. Why is this your topic that you travel the country and travel the world and help educators and others understand?
Yeah, thanks, Vicki, for having me. So you're absolutely right. It is a topic that's extremely important to me. And in all honesty, it stemmed from my own personal experience and my own personal struggles as a teenager. For me, I did find myself in several unhealthy and abusive dating relationships. And unfortunately, they had a direct impact on who I was personally, my academic abilities, and my ability to even go on and thrive and succeed professionally. So once I was able to get out of those situations, I knew that I wanted to do more to help others who were going through similar experiences. Little did I know how many young people really were affected the same way I was. The numbers are incredibly high, so now I've kind of made it my life mission to reach other students and teens who feel alone and to help the adults around them understand how they can possibly help prevent a teen from being at risk and struggling even more than they should.
So what are the numbers for teen dating abuse?
Yeah, so the numbers range, but typically it's 1 in 4. There's been studies, every decade as to how many teens are in abusive dating relationships, and 1 in 4 seems to keep popping up. So it's pretty high. I mean, 25% of any student population is a really large number.
Yeah, is it mostly female?
The more that I do this work, I really believe that both genders are affected. We value it differently based on the type of abuse. A big type of abuse among teens is emotional and psychological and mental and verbal. And that can happen just as often, from a female to a male or vice versa, or even in same-sex relationships. Statistically, girls are usually affected the most, but I think men and boys are easily in these abusive relationships as well.
Well, as a teacher who teaches teenagers, there's a lot of teenage drama. There just is. But how do teachers know and understand when it has crossed the line? Can we know?
I think so. So for me, when I've looked back at my own experience, I'm kind of appalled at how many opportunities there were for adults and even teachers and educators to intervene where they didn't. For me, I went from being a great student with great grades to suddenly, showing up to school late constantly. I was tardy. I wasn't turning in homework. My grades started to plummet. So even something as simple as that can be a warning sign to a teacher. The way a student suddenly is conducting him or herself in the classroom compared to maybe who they were, when you first met them at the beginning of the year.
Well, of course, some teachers will just say, oh, that's a bad influence. But you're actually saying that that was a symptom of abuse?
Absolutely, because for a teenager who's in an unhealthy, toxic, abusive relationship, the relationship can become all-consuming, where they're texting all evening, they're putting their homework aside to argue with their partner, maybe they're skipping homework to go do something with their partner, because a lot of times someone who's abusive, they try to isolate you from your friends, they try to spend all of their time with you. And so, for me personally, school and grades became secondary to my relationship and simply trying to manage it and appease my boyfriend day in and day out.
Here's the hard thing is that there's kind of a line that many of us teachers are really taught not to cross, because you want to get a parent angry at you. Tell a teenager that they shouldn't be dating somebody that the parents approve of.
Right.
How are teachers supposed to handle this? What do you counsel teachers to do?
Yeah, I think a lot of times teachers feel like, well, I just don't know much enough about this. I'm not sure what to say. But in every school building, there are trained professionals. And I think that the role of any teacher is simply to trust that gut instinct that they have that a student might be going through some difficulties and simply refer them to guidance or a school adjustment counselor or a social worker that's at the school and let them handle it. Let them ask those difficult questions because it might be even larger than a teacher might think. For me, it wasn't just my grades, but because I was being abused by my partner, I was self-harming, I was depressed, I had disordered eating habits. So it's a much bigger trigger. There's so many other secondary consequences if this stuff is left unaddressed. So I think the best advice I can give is simply, check in with the student, say, hey, is everything okay? I noticed that, lately you've been late to class. Is everything okay? Or can I help you talk to guidance about something? And sometimes even just asking can make a big difference for a teen who wouldn't normally open up themselves.
So Ashley, take us inside you have a conference room, you have 20, let's just say teenage girls, 20 teenage girls, and you're going to talk to them about dating abuse. What do you say?
Well, I certainly share my story because I find that sometimes telling my story is one of the most eye-opening moments because a lot of students will say, wow, did we date the same person? Because I hate to say it, a lot of these things are textbook. A lot of times I start off by asking them, what are the qualities of a healthy relationship? And it's very easy for any student, any teen, any person to list those common qualities: respect, patience, boundaries, kindness. But sometimes in action, we don't hold our relationships to those very standards. So I really talk about how abusive relationships happen, how someone isn't abusive in the beginning. You fall in love with them, you develop a bond, and then they start to change later, and how sometimes you can excuse those behaviors. So I really try to paint a realistic picture of what abuse looks like and really, really try to hammer in the emotional harms. One thing I've noticed in the last few years is that technology really has just radically increased the amount of abusive behaviors, from demanding a partner's passwords and access to their social media accounts. And it's becoming scarier than ever. So just trying to talk about, boundaries and respectful behaviors and making sure that we constantly assess our relationships so that we're not, putting up with those things.
Well, even demanding pictures, right?
Oh, absolutely. Right. And, this expectation of, well, if you trust me, you would. Or if you had nothing to hide, you would give me your Instagram password. Or if you want to be with me, you would unfriend every other guy on Instagram. So, yeah, it's just there's so many unfair pressures. And, at the end of the day, I think a lot of teens feel, compelled to say yes or to do something, even though in their hearts they know it's wrong. And that inner battle can make it just really emotionally challenging for a young person to deal with their relationship and then everything else in their lives.
But Ashley, this is such a hot button for me. I don't even know how to say it. This whole promposal, live your life for the world to see pressure that actually many parents put their kids under in some ways, because it's not the boys or the girls doing the promposal. It's usually the moms doing it, coming up with it and help put it together. But there is an immense amount of pressure on these kids that they should be dating somebody. Do you think that sometimes kids are settling for a bad relationship instead of no relationship?
I do. And this is something that I hear from students firsthand. I say, what are some reasons that somebody might stay with somebody who doesn't treat them well? And they say, social status, your friends think you have a great relationship. You've painted this great picture online. Nobody would believe you if you told them the truth. So I think you're absolutely right. There is such a pressure to be in a relationship, that seems great, and to want to hide the realities of maybe one that isn't.
Well, and is there a danger of how much of life should be lived for people to see? This whole boundary thing you're talking about, I think is such an important piece, boundaries between people, but then also a boundary between you and the rest of the world. I mean, does the world really need to make your life a reality TV show?
It's a tough question for me to answer too, because I'm in my early 30s. So I'm on the cusp of, the old school way of living life and then now introducing social media. Personally, my choice is I don't like to share my whole personal life online, but the next generation, the generation now, it's so normal to them to post everything. I mean, their parents are posting their whole childhoods and their baby lives on the internet for the world to see. So I don't know. Maybe it's going to become normalized, and it's certainly not something that I hope happens. But I think we just need to teach teens, again, just to pick and choose. Social media for me has been a great tool for me to succeed and get opportunities and grow as a person professionally. And I think we need to get back to teaching, some of those skills to students, is how to leverage social media to build your resume and promote a good brand and use it for your future benefit versus just for show and for the likes.
I love social media too, but I learned early on, there's some things that just don't belong on it. So Ashley, if teachers or parents have listened to this episode with their teenager, and their teenager has a light bulb go on and they're like, okay, I think that she's talking about me. I think this is my relationship. Could you give a 1-minute encouragement to that teenager? And we could even have some adults who feel like they're in this category about what they need to do next.
Yeah, first and foremost, you are not alone. If I had to guess, most of them probably haven't told anyone these truths that they're feeling. So my advice is to simply speak up, tell someone, even if that's a trusted friend. And sometimes just being aware of the situation that you're in is the very first step in determining what your next steps are. Abusive relationships, unfortunately, don't get better. You can't change someone who has these behaviors. It's just who they are. It's what they've learned. And it's very hard for them to unlearn them without wanting to do that on their own. So know that you deserve more, and you can be doing much more with your life and succeeding much more in your life if you weren't dealing with someone like this. And there's help out there. And of course, I'm out there. I tell people they can Instagram me, they can email me, and I'm always here to talk to someone and help them decide their options if they feel like there's nobody in their life that they can talk to as well.
So thank you, Ashley, for being with us. Her name is Ashley Bendiksen. She has a lot of resources online. We'll give her information in the show notes. And Ashley, thank you for using your story and your challenge, which are very, very difficult when people start digging through, but that you're using them for good. And I appreciate that very much. Thank you, Ashley. So as you prepare for back to school, do you want a calm classroom environment, or are you ready to take it to the next level with engagement? Linda Cardamus from Teach for the Heart has been on the show before and has recorded some very popular episodes. If you go to coolcatteacher.com/classroom now, you can sign up for one of Linda's free webinars on classroom management or leveling up. Just go to coolcatteacher.com/classroom. In today's show, we have learned about teen dating abuse. So here is your podcast PD challenge for today. It is to discuss this topic or share this conversation with another educator to get their views. Talk to your colleagues or administrators about what would be appropriate to do in your school or district if you were faced with a teen dating abuse situation. Or perhaps you already have been faced with such a situation and you want to discuss, how things could have happened differently based on today's show. So remember, it is important to discuss these situations before they happen and have these conversations so you know how they will be handled. It's easier to handle a sensitive topic like this when there are not people involved yet. But with 1 out of 4 teens and dealing with teen dating abuse, if that number is to be believed, and that seems so high to me, but we could at least agree that it is happening, this is something that we need to discuss.